Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be ranking all 59 brawlers in the game right now, from the very worst all the way up into the very best. So comparing also from this meta to the previous meta. So before we jump into it, make sure you're using a creator code. That'd be greatly appreciated. Without further ado, let's jump into the rankings. Okay, so starting off with the very worst brawler within the game right now. At number 59, we have Edgar. So nothing's changed about Edgar. The meta hasn't really helped him out whatsoever. It takes him such a long time to get super, and in the 3v3 setting, it's so easy for you and your teammate just to pinch down Edgar. He might get a kill in a 1v1, but will he survive and recharge his super? He won't, and that makes him one of the worst brawlers within the game. Okay, so next up at number 58, we have Shelly. So she still remains within the F tier, even with the introduction of Poco in the meta. She just really doesn't do anything within the meta. There's a few maps where she's okay somewhat when it comes down to ladder, but in competitive play, you've never seen her play because there's just far better options in terms of countering tanks. So next up at number 57, we have Otis. So Otis, a brand new brawler within the game. Everyone thought that it'd be somewhat decent when his second stop power came out. It is just not the case. It takes him so long to get within the game. It takes so long to get his super, and his super is incredibly overrated, especially in comparison to other brawlers that get the super a lot quicker. He doesn't really have a map or game mode where he's used at all in competitive. Okay, and lastly for the F tier, we have Dynamite at number 56. So Dynamite, still one of the worst brawlers within the game right now. Main reason being there's so many assassin brawlers, so many capabilities to close the gap between him, and it's really hard for you to hit consistent shots. A lot of people may disagree with this, but when it comes down to purely competitive play, he's never seen whatsoever. There's only a couple maps where I might actually use him, and that's only in extreme circumstances as a last pick, like Pit Stop, for example. But still, there's just way other better options in the meta. Okay, so that concludes the F tier. So the F tier are the brawlers which I would literally never use in any circumstance. Okay, to start off the D tier, we have Mr. P at number 55. So Mr. P right now really does struggle, especially in this type of meta. There's a lot of brawlers that just pierce through his porters, like Janet and Cole, and also it's a very Poco meta, so all the tanks really don't help him out. Doesn't have high DPS and just gets incredibly overwhelmed. As I said, he's not even good as like a last pick on a lot of different modes as well. He just really doesn't have a purpose in this meta. Okay, so next up at number 54, we have Colt. So Colt really does struggle within this meta. He only has one decent game mode, and that is Heist, and still there's so many better alternatives like Brock, for example. Colette, just a way better damage dealer. He's only really good for his wall break, and there's just a lot of other better wall break options out there like Griff as well. He just completely struggles within this meta. Okay, so next up at number 53, we have Barley. So Barley is only good as a last pick in extreme circumstances. I've seen him being played on Deeper Diner sometimes in competitive, can be okay on Pit Stop and Super Beach as a last pick, but as I said, in extreme circumstances, a lot of assassin brawlers have to be banned out, and you have to be facing off against the squishier brawlers. But other than that, he really does struggle within the meta. So next up at number 52, we have Jessie. So Jessie right now, there isn't really a spot for her within the meta. She's only decent on certain game modes like Brawl Ball and Hot Zone. Like, she can be okay on dueling beetles and can be somewhat of a decent counter to the Poco double tank comps just because of her gadget, but overall she isn't really played often and really does suck. Okay, so next up at number 51, we have Primo. So the reason why Primo is a little bit higher than some of the others on the list is literally because of Heist, and because there's a few tanky maps like Pit Stop and Hot Potato. He's actually often picked as like a last pick to counter like multiple tanks or certain brawlers like Cole, Buzz, even Bull and Daryl. Primo can have a really good matchup against, but other than that, he really does suck and doesn't have any place within the meta other than that extreme scenario. Okay, so next up at number 50, we have Tara. So Tara is somewhat decent on ladder, especially within Gem Grab and Brawl Ball. In competitive, I don't think I've seen her for at least a few months. Every single lane really does outdo her. It takes a long time to get her super, and she doesn't really do a lot of damage at the moment. So this is why Tara is really struggling. She's really mode dependent, only really okay on double swoosh. Okay, so next up at number 49, we have Mortis. So again, a lot of you might be surprised, but again, within competitive, Mortis really does suck, even as a last pick. There's just so many different counters to him in the meta, and with Gale, another brawler that has to be within the top of the meta, just fully hard counters, and Mortis makes it so easy to play against, and you really need to be super skilled for it to pay off when it comes down to competitive, as I said. You only really bring him out when you're up against like 3 hard counters, but as draft has kind of evolved, people have learned not to kind of be countered by these assassin brawlers. Okay, so next up at number 48, we have Frank. So Frank is literally never used within competitive, but within Power League, he is used quite often, probably a lot more than he should, but a good Frank can still absolutely pop off. But the main problem with him is that, again, he has way too many counters, way too many brawlers that can get up and close and personal and just destroy him. Okay, lastly for the D tier, at number 47, we have Bull. So the main reason, again, why Bull is a little bit higher than some of the other brawlers on this list is literally because he's a pretty strong brawler when it comes down to hides, specifically Hot Potato and Pit Stop. He can still be a force to be reckoned with, but overall within the meta, there still is a lot of brawlers that counter him way too easily, hence making him one of the worst brawlers. Okay, so that is D tier wrapped up. I feel like you could actually switch quite a few of these brawlers within the D tier, but still, I think these brawlers basically aren't competitively viable unless they're in extreme circumstances, like, as I said, Barley is the last pick, Bull and Heist. But other than that, these brawlers are literally never seen. Okay, so now moving on to the C tier, starting off with Eva. Could be being a little bit generous with her placings, because me personally, I'll probably put her a little bit lower, but I just know that a lot of people still vouch on Eva. I think she's only really viable on Canal Grande and out in the open. She takes such a long time to get a super, and for me, it's just really easily countered within this meta. Next up at number 45, we have Rosa. So Rosa is barely seen in competitive right now. She's only really strong on certain maps as a last pick, like Double Swoosh, Harder at Mine. She still can be somewhat okay, but there's just a lot of other assassins that overbear her right now, and also Canal Grande she can be somewhat okay, but I feel like in ladder she's decent, and that's why she kind of sits towards the bottom of the meta. So next up at number 44, we have Sandy. So Sandy is always a brawler that some people tend to rely on a little bit too much. As time has gone on, people have finally realized like how bad Sandy is right now. Doesn't do a lot of damage, takes a long time to get his super, and just overall there's a lot more influential brawlers when it comes down to the game right now, but he still is somewhat usable on maps like Canal Grande. I see a little bit of usability with him, but overall, again, just really does suck. So next up at number 43, we have Byron. So Byron has really fell off on the meta since his nerf to his reload speed. It just really has impacted him, because before he could always put out some damage or at least some healing, and within the EMEA monthly finals, he wasn't used whatsoever, and within East Asia, he only won it 2 out of 5 times when he was picked. He used to be this super reliable, versatile brawler that he could play in literally on every single mode, every single matchup, but right now, there's just so many brawlers that just overbear him so much. Okay, so next up at number 42, we have Meg. So Meg still isn't really that strong of a brawler, but she's definitely increased in viability in the meta. She only received like a 1-hit supercharge rate buff, which doesn't really seem like a lot, but it has helped her, especially in game modes like Hot Zone, because it used to take her so long to get into the game. Of course, she's like the worst brawler in her standard form, but being able to cycle out super a little bit easier makes her a bit more of a force. Okay, so next up at number 41, we have Jackie. So the buff did help her out a little bit within the meta. She's gone from one of the worst brawlers within the game to somewhat okay. She's only really good on like Brawl Ball because of the interactions that have changed. She can still put out a lot of pressure, but for me, she still does really lack in the range department. So normally when she takes someone down, she's probably going to die still, but still she's at least usable, and actually used a few times by some pro teams on Canal Grande. So next up at number 40, we have Bibi. So Bibi has the same problem with a lot of other tanks, where they're only really strong on Heist. She's somewhat of an okay brawler on a couple of other game modes and maps, but Heist is where she should be predominantly used in, and yes, just somewhat okay, because she get a lot of damage on the safe with her bubble, and there's a few brawlers which can counter pretty well. So next up at number 39, we have Nani. So we're slowly seeing the drop off of Nani within the meta, but still she's somewhat usable in multiple game modes. So she's only good on Bounty, on Shooting Star, but she literally is the golden pick there. She's pretty decent on Knockout, and also okay on Heist, but we've seen as the months go on, her usability within monthly finals is dropping a lot. So next up at number 38, we have Grom. So Grom is a brawler that's only really strong in Knockout, can be used in some game modes and within some settings, but for me, he's a brawler that you can only pick towards the latter end, just because he's easily countered by those really aggressive brawlers. But in the right setting, as I said, especially within Knockout, he can be incredibly dangerous. So it's more of a high risk, high reward brawler. Okay, so next up at number 37, we have Lou. So Lou didn't get picked within the monthly finals, I believe, but if he was to be picked, it would be in Hot Zone. He's still pretty strong there, and also with a Poco meta, he can feed his super pretty easily, because there are a lot more tankier brawlers within the game right now. So yeah, Lou's still still an okay pick, but I would say he's one of the more riskier options within the meta. Okay, so next up at number 36, we have Leon. So Leon is a brawler that's incredibly fallen off within the meta. He's received no nerfs, but the introduction of Vision Gear within the meta just makes it so he's counterable by so many different brawlers. Literally, all you have to do is find a brawler that has some type of like spread attack pattern and put the Vision Gear on him, and he pretty much counter Leon. Whereas before, there was only a few counters to him, like Crow, for example, which was definitely a meta brawler and did counter Leon a lot. But right now, so many brawlers just counter him in the Power League kind of draft format, hence why he's so weak within the meta. Okay, so next up at number 35, we have Ash. So you might be really surprised by this one. I may be underrating him a little bit, but within monthly finals, he wasn't seen whatsoever. So there's a lot of meta brawlers right now that just hard counter him way too much, like Griff. He opens up the map a lot. You have Colette. You also have Gale as well. And I just think that just purely because he wasn't picked too often makes him somewhat of a weaker brawler in comparison to the other brawlers, but still I think within ladder he can still absolutely pop off, and he's still a pretty strong brawler within the meta. Okay, so next up at number 34, we have Buzz. So Buzz, the main reason why he's above Ash and a few other brawlers is literally because of a last pick categories. So Buzz can still be a strong brawler to counter other brawlers, and that's why he's, as I said, higher than others. I think he's really strong against the squishy brawlers, and especially since the health buff, it's really helped him out, and you've seen him quite a fair bit within the Brawl competitive meta. Okay, so next up at number 33, we have Brock. So Brock's use rate has gone up quite a lot in the competitive meta. He's used near enough all of us, well, not all of the time, but used a lot in knockout right now, especially in out in the open. He's used a lot in shooting star, and then also in safe zone as well. He's one of the go-to brawlers, so that's why he's probably gone up a little bit within the rankings, even though it is a very Poco meta. I think on the maps that Poco aren't strong on, or if he's banned out, Brock can still somewhat thrive. So that concludes the C tier. So C tier is mainly brawlers that are only really good on a couple of maps or as like a last pick, but still somewhat viable options within the meta. Okay, so next up at number 32, we have 8-Bit. So I might have overrated 8-Bit just a little bit, but I think whenever I see him in competitive, that he has a decent win rate, and especially on the really defensive maps, he can get a lot of value. He's really strong in heist. He's good on defensive maps like Backyard Bowl, and he can always be that go-to gem carrier when it comes down to gem grab. So next up at number 31, we have Tix. So Tix usage rate has incredibly gone down a lot since the introduction of a lot of aggressive brawlers within the meta. Within EU, he wasn't picked at all within the monthlies, but in East Asia he was banned out like 5 times, so he's still pretty strong on knockout and bounty. But in general, I think there's a lot of easier ways to counter him right now. So next up at number 30, we have Spike. So Spike right now isn't really seen in competitive too much, but the main reason why he's at the middle of the pack is because he's always that okay brawler in like every single mode and map. Probably outside of knockout and bounty, he's still somewhat usable. I wouldn't really say he's the go-to pick. He can counter a few brawlers, but I think he's still a little bit too squishy to be considered one of the better brawlers. So next up at number 29, we have Daryl. So Daryl right now is only really viable in heist. He can be somewhat okay in the other modes only when the opponents are more squishy characters, because again, there are a lot of tank counters within this meta, but still he provides to be one of the better heist picks. So next up at number 28, we have Piper. So Piper is being counted a little bit more so than usual in this type of meta. There's a lot of max, a lot of Pocos, so she can tend to struggle in that department, but a lot of times then brawlers are banned, and she could still especially thrive when it's a knockout. Shooting star, she's like the best pick there, so she's still somewhat of a viable option. So next up at number 27, we have Sprout. So Sprout as a last pick when it comes to knockout and bounty is a force to be reckoned with, and that's why he's a little bit stronger than his other throwers because of the draft format, right? He's so strong knockout bounty, can be good as well on certain other maps and game modes as a last pick like Backyard Bowl, so do not mess with a Sprout as a last pick. So next up at number 26, we have Ems. So the reason why Ems is so strong in this meta is because Poco is one of the top brawlers, and she's literally the best counter to a Poco. She's mainly used on Brawl though, specifically in maps like Center Stage and also Sneaky Fields. She's a really strong option, but overall, just because of how hard she counters tanks, that makes her still somewhat relevant within the meta. Okay, so next up at number 25, we have Nita. So when the update first dropped, I thought that Nita would somewhat be in and around the top 10, but for me, she's probably really like overrated by the majority of players, just because when it comes down to competitive, she doesn't really have a high use rate whatsoever. She was used like once within the East Asia monthly finals, and then she was used 4 times in EU and only won once. People have learned how to counter her, so the main way to counter her is by keeping your distance, of course, or removing the walls around her, because she really really lacks the range, and that's why she's not really at the top of the meta. But still, she's still like a good pick within heists like Hot Potato. She's pretty strong. Pit Stop, she's pretty strong, but overall people just know how to counter her. So next up at number 24 we have Rico. So we're slowly seeing the drop of Rico as other brawlers are just power creeping him a little bit too much, and with the introduction of a lot of meta brawlers like Cole, Bonnie and Janet, they can just easily close the gap on Rico, and he hasn't really got too many defensive capabilities, so it's quite easy to take him down. But overall he's still a solid pick when it comes down to heist. He's got a couple of good maps within Pit Stop and also Safe Zone. You know, it can be a somewhat good option on Hard Rock. Well, he is a strong option on Hard Rock Mine as well, so still he has his niches, but he isn't the brawler that he wants to be. So next up at number 23 we have Pam. So Pam is still a somewhat okay brawler within the meta, not really picked too often, but as a last pick or even as like a strong pick within Hot Zone, she can definitely be a force to be reckoned with, especially with her gadget. She still counters aggressive brawlers really like easily, and if the enemy team has multiple aggro brawlers, specifically in Knockout, you can easily whip out a Pam and she's going to have really good results because she's so strong towards the end stage of Knockout. Okay, so next up at number 22 we have Bo. So the fall off of Bo was somewhat unpredictable. Like, I thought Bo was always that solid option that you could go for, but within the monthly finals recently, Bo wasn't banned or picked at all in EU, and within East Asia he was only picked in Knockout, Gold Arm, Gulch, which he did win both of them, so he's still like a decent option on some game modes like Knockout specifically. But overall I just think he's like somewhat okay across every single game mode. Like, he's not overbearingly strong but not bad either. Okay, so finishing off the B tier we have Amber. So Amber is a brawler that has really risen in popularity, specifically in EU and NA. In East Asia she was only picked once, I believe. I think she actually won, but within EU, like, she was banned so much. She was banned the 6th most and also picked the 4th most. Just goes to show, like, people think that Amber's a really strong pick, which she is, specifically in Hot Zone and Gem Grab. Maybe a little bit overrated because she didn't have the best win rate, but overall she's good against some of the compositions. So main reason why she's probably thriving a little bit more in this meta is because of Max. Max pairs really well with her. But yeah, Amber is a really strong brawler within the meta. So that wraps up the B tier. So the B tier again is normally brawlers that are just decent everywhere or that have their strong couple of modes. Okay, so starting off the A tier with number 20 with Fang. So Fang is an incredible last pick when it comes down to multiple game modes like Bounty, like Knockout in particular, but also even Heist. Just, he's pretty good everywhere basically as a last pick because he can easily catapult himself onto any brawler. He's got the stun to also help him against the brawlers that used to counter him, and just overall he's always been somewhat of an underrated brawler. Okay, so next up at number 19 we have Surge. So Surge right now within the meta is definitely overrated by the majority of people. He does have a really broken gadget though, and when he does have the right matchup it will completely dominate, and it'll be really hard for you to get any sort of counterplay against him. But he's only really a counter brawler. He's only really picked towards the end stages of draft because good players know how to play against him. Like in East Asia he was used 3 times, only won once. He was only picked once in Europe and he actually lost. People just know how to keep the distance against him. That's why he struggles still a little bit in competitive. So next up at number 18 we have Lola. So Lola in the past meta she was the most picked brawler in monthly finals. This time around she was only picked once in EU, and it just goes to show that the gadget nerf did indeed do something. But I still think she's a really strong brawler. She still was picked a lot in East Asia, and when it comes down to Heist and Hot Zone she still has a high win percentage just because the amount of pressure you can get with both you and your clone, and still she's like a pretty well balanced. So next up at number 17 we have Belle. So Belle was the most picked brawler by far in East Asia, just going to show like how versatile she is. I think she's a little bit overrated in that category just because she didn't have the highest win rate, but anyways she's pretty good against everything, right? She's one of the hardest counters to one of the most meta brawlers in Bonnie. Overall she's played pretty much everywhere, any long range map, and Belle is always that go-to brawler. So next up at number 16 we have Squeak. So Squeak is still a really strong brawler, although it is more of a Poco Max meta and aggression really doesn't favor Squeak. I think in a Power League format you can get away with it because you can also pick brawlers around your composition that can also like get rid of Squeak's weaknesses, you know, like brawlers like Gale and Colette. But anyways, like his gadget is super busted, especially on specific maps, and he was the 3rd most banned brawler in EU, well, in both monthly finals, which just goes to show as a last pick he can absolutely dominate. So coming in at number 15 we have Crow. So Crow was a brawler which me myself as well included thought would really drop off with the recent nerf to his slowing toxin gadget, going from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. I thought that would near enough kill him, but it's still somewhat of a meta brawler. He's the 15th best in my opinion. Within EU he was banned out a lot, or if he wasn't banned out he had had a 75% win rate. In East Asia, it was like the 4th most banned out brawler. So just goes to show that people still think he's a really strong brawler, specifically in like gem grab. As long as you just communicate quicker and pinch faster, the slow on multiple brawlers, it's still a pretty broken mechanic. Okay, so next up at number 14, we have Gale. So Gale boasted their highest win rate in EU at 83%. I think that Gale is really insane in this meta, just because of the ability to stun lock people pretty instantly. It's a Poco meta as well. He's a fantastic counter against pretty much every single tank, and you can always rely on him to not get countered, right? So if you go, I don't know, for example, as I said before, like a Squeak, you could always pair him with like a Gale, and both of them combined can really counter like so many different combinations, hence why he's just so strong in this meta. So coming in at number 13, we have Stu. So ever since the update dropped, he's had a glitch with his breakthrough gadget, which has definitely helped him out within the meta, but I don't think it's actually made him as strong as I first thought. He's still a really good option though. He had like the 4th highest pick rate and also like the 4th highest win rate within EU, which is pretty strong. Overall, he's super versatile, right? That's one of the main reasons why he's so strong. On Hot Zone, he's an incredible pick because of his speed zone turret, and just overall he pairs with pretty much every brawler within the game. Okay, so coming in as the 12th strongest brawler within the game right now, we have Colette. So she's in and around the top 10. You could easily make an argument of a top 10 brawler, but right now she's absolutely insane, specifically within the Power League meta. She's so strong against some of the meta brawlers like Carl and Bonnie, but just overall she's a force to be reckoned with because of that gotcha gadget. It combines so well with her mass attack star power. Just overall, you can't really do too much if you're looking to play one of the meta brawlers. If a Colette is, well, if you're against a Colette, she literally bodes so well in monthly finals as well. Most banned, well, one of the most bans, one of the highest pick rates, and also one of the highest win rates, going to show how strong she is right now. Okay, so coming in as the 11th best brawler within this meta, we have Jean. So Jean is an incredible flex brawler within this meta. By that I mean is that he's good pretty much everywhere and there's not too many counters to him. So in East Asia, he had the 2nd highest win rate. Just goes to show like how strong he is on players that are really skillful, but also he had like the 3rd highest ban rate in EU. So just going to show like people don't want to face off against him because it's pretty hard to counter him. Jean's just good everywhere. Knockout, bounty, gem grab, brawl ball. The only bad game mode for him is really high. Okay, so now moving into the top 10 brawlers within this meta, starting off with Penny. So Penny has got to be one of the most flexible brawlers within this meta. She's literally good everywhere and pretty much good against everything. Probably her biggest weakness is still aggressive brawlers, but still she proves to be one of the strongest brawlers. So she was the 3rd most picked in East Asia and the 3rd most banned within EU. So it just goes to show that all of these different stats combined just make her such a strong brawler. So coming in as the 9th strongest brawler within the meta, we have Ruffs. So I thought Ruffs was going to go down a little bit just because of Max and Poco. Maybe he didn't really have like either the DPS or the health to deal with it, but he still thrives in this meta. He has the highest win rate by far in East Asia at like 86%, which is pretty insane. He's so good combined with everything. I think he's pretty usable across every single game mode. Like he was even being used in Bounty quite a few times because of his wall break options as well. Like his wall break counters so many different brawlers within this meta. You're allowed to like outrange certain compositions with this aspect. Okay, so that rounds off the A tier then. So the A tier has so many really strong options within this ranking. Okay, so now moving on to the 8th best brawler within this meta right now, we have Bee. So there's been no change to Bee whatsoever. It's just the meta really favors her. So she's one of the best counters to brawlers like Max and Poco. She was banned the 2nd most in EU, so just going to show that people just hate facing off against her. She's such a strong pick when it comes down to certain game modes like a gem grab, a brawl ball. She can even be used as a lane and gem grab. Like Heist, she's a really strong mid pick. Also Hot Zone as well. She can counter so many different brawlers, and that's why she's one of the top brawlers right now. Okay, so now moving on to the 7th strongest brawler within the new meta, we have Sam. So I was a little bit wrong with Sam. I thought he was going to be pretty weak, and so did most content creators, but Sam, with the ability to heal up, especially when you're really low, like 30% of your missing health once you get your super back, it is pretty insane. You get a speed boost as well. His super can essentially like two-shot so many squishy brawlers within the meta right now. It's still pretty hard to get like an accurate ranking of him just because there's not a lot of data. Like he's not used in competitive right now. He will be though in the next coming week, and also just not a lot of people have him maxed out. But if I was to predict right now where he sits, it's got to be in and around the top 10. Okay, so now moving into the 6th best brawler within this meta, we have Griff. So Griff again hasn't really had any changes to him whatsoever. People just started to get used to how strong his other star power is. Being able to heal up specifically when you're low passively is a pretty strong attribute to have. His wall break gadget counters so many compositions right now. His super has incredibly high DPS. He cycles it really quickly as well, and he's super versatile. It's the main reason why he's towards the top is that you can pretty much put him in every single composition on every single map. Okay, so now moving on to the 5th best brawler within this meta, we have Bonnie. So even with the nerf to Bonnie with the last update, it didn't really touch her too much. People are starting to learn how to counter her a little bit, specifically with brawlers like Colette and Belle, but still she has so much firepower, the ability just to jump on literally any brawler in the game and kill them near enough 9 times out of 10 is just so overwhelming. And the ability again to get back pressure, a lot of the times in game modes specifically like Gem Grab and Hot Zone, your backs can be against the wall a lot of the times, but her super can relieve so much pressure, making her one of the best brawlers within the game. Okay, so now moving into the 4th strongest brawler within the meta right now, we have Carl. So Carl is still pretty busted when it comes down to competitive play. Near enough all of the time you have to be wary. You have to either have like a counter to Carl, or you have to ban him out, or simply pick him if the opportunity arises, just because of how strong he is. Pretty much everywhere right now you can use him, but more so in Power League he's getting countered a little bit more often than not, just because of brawlers like Colette and Gale, but just because of how prevalent he kind of forces the meta around him, it makes him one of the best brawlers right now. Okay, so now coming in as the 3rd best brawler in the meta right now, we have Max. So Max, the main reason why she's so strong, other brawlers around her have received a nerf, and specifically her biggest counter, Crow. Crow still is pretty much like a meta brawler, so that's why she's not like #1 right now, but still she was the most banned brawler in EU monthly finals. Just going to show like skilled players, you want to ban out Max because of how dominant she is. She's super versatile, pretty much every single game mode and map you can play on Max, and as I said, like the ability to speed up your teammates is just so overwhelming for the enemy team 9 times out of 10. Okay, so now moving on to the 2nd best brawler within this meta, we still have Janet. Even with her recent nerf to her supercharge and her HP, she's still the 2nd best brawler in the game. Main reason being, again, she's good everywhere, literally everywhere. She's busted because of her gadget being able to scout, keep people from regenning as well. Such a toxic trait to have. You can use her super just to get away, or also just to build up a lot of pressure. Again, just like Bonnie, she has a super where if your backs are against the wall, it's pretty easy to build your super back up and gain back pressure instantly. You can literally fly over to the other side of spawn and literally force out a pinch. She was the most banned brawler in both East Asia and EU. She was literally banned out like 18 times in East Asia, just going to show like she's such a strong first pick, isn't really countered by too many brawlers, hence still making her one of the strongest brawlers right now. Okay, so now moving on to the best brawler within the game right now, we have Poco. So he got a recent buff to his damage by 150 damage points. I wouldn't have thought this would have been big enough to make him the best brawler in the game, but it changed so many interactions. It allowed him to be so aggressive. His heals can snipe people across the map with Screeching Solo. He's such a toxic brawler to face off against. In Hot Zone, he's so hard to face off against because you're essentially feeding his super all of the time. He's got such an easy spread shot attack mechanic, so easy to use, and pretty much paired well with every single brawler within the game. He's so deadly right now. Alright guys, it's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one. So I really appreciate your guys' support on these videos because they take so long to prepare. I was literally looking at data from like all the monthly finals for so long, as you've probably seen on my Twitter. Like, I don't normally do that, but I put even more extra effort in this tier list. So really appreciate you guys' support and feedback, and also let me know whether you disagree or agree with most of these rankings. As I said, I try to incorporate competitive stats as much as possible just to back up my points further. Let me know if you like that type of style. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.